Welcome back to the Hospitality MD podcast. I'm Kyle Allison, your host. Today it's my pleasure to bring on Lauren Martin. She's a former leadership and development with Omni Hotels and Resorts, who most recently served the guests and team members at the 483-room Omni Homestead as the Assistant Director of Housekeeping. She received the 2019 Manager of the Year win and has remained confident and outspoken in regards to her passion for hospitality and human rights for people of color and LGBTQ plus individuals in the workplace and beyond. It's my pleasure to bring Lauren to the show. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to start by sharing the LinkedIn post that you put out that really made me like connect with you, and like ultimately that post was what made me pretty much instantly reach out to you and be like, we want you on the show. So I'm going to read that for everybody here, because I thought it was really, really cool what you said.
Thank you.
After 100 days on furlough, it's easy to get down and forget who you are. I spent so much time giving my positive vibes and energy to everyone else that I forgot to give them to one person in particular, me. In those first 100 days, I rediscovered my own voice. It is loud, baby. Today, I put on my power suit, looked up, and remembered who I am, a passionate, hungry leader bursting with enthusiasm. If they counted you out, they simply can't count. I'm just getting started. So that's awesome, right? Like, I think a lot of people, especially in the hospitality industry, I mean, people are furloughed, they're getting laid off. I mean, it's and it takes a toll on you. Like hospitality people, they take a lot of pride in what they do. It becomes a part of your identity when you work in, a really cool property or and doing something that you love. So what was your mindset when you were posting this? Was there any like event that kind of like triggered this emotional response, or tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. So obviously, it's tough to be on furlough, especially when you're kind of riding the roller coaster of. I started the year as gaining that accolade as Manager of the Year. Was recently promoted to another Omni and was really excited about my future. And then coronavirus hits. I'm furloughed and our resort closed, and I'm back living with my parents. So it was kind of like I was at the top of my game. I was so excited for the future, and then I'm like, oh no, I'm back at square one. I'm back to what I was like before college, living with mom and dad again. So it was frustrating, but I've never been one to kind of sit around and wait for somebody to call me and say, okay, we're ready for you to come back to work. So I started thinking, how can I better myself during this time off? In hospitality, we don't get a lot of time off and we're not with our families often. So I looked at the bright side and realized I have spent more time with my parents now than I ever have before, and it can be a good thing. And then also, I've kind of decided I really wanted to invest in my education. So enrolled back in school to start studying for my master's at Florida, and I've gotten back into fitness. So there's been a lot of positive things that have come from my period of time off. And once I hit that, I realized after about 3 months, it's like, wow, it's been 90 days since I've been furloughed. And then I decided I wanted to post something to kind of talk about my experience. I'm really known by people that do know me personally as somebody that's happy, bubbly, super enthusiastic, and passionate about what I do. So I felt like the post might resonate with some people, as even the people that are so happy and positive all the time can have this period of self-doubt and kind of rediscovery as well, and just show that there are highs and there are lows, but it's really how you bounce back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there's a certain element of guilt for a lot of people because maybe they, haven't had like a rediscovery just yet, or maybe they feel like, again, like I said, their identity was riding on their hotel job or
Yeah.
really any job, and they've been let go. Do you have any advice or anything that you would say to somebody who can't seem to break out of those mental shackles, after having something traumatic like this happen to them?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is just remember that you are your greatest investment. And it is all about what you do for yourself in order to be successful. So if you want to continue to be successful, you have to be that positive person for yourself first, before you're able to give your energy to others. So I would use that time to kind of reflect on what is most important to you. What do you value the most? Are you in the right part of the industry? Maybe it's time to make a switch, but take some time for yourself and reflect on what's most important.
Yeah, definitely. That's great advice. And I'm glad to start seeing like a lot of my connections and people that I know like are starting their own business or like, you know what, I'm just gonna use the skills that I acquired in hospitality to do something else completely. So there's a lot of positive stories out there. I think people are definitely um, maybe realizing that it's not going to be like what we thought in March. Oh, we'll be back by
Right?
May. We'll be back for the busy season in the summer. It's not a big deal. No, people are starting to realize and they're taking action. So yeah, I just really wanted to share that post because it inspired me and definitely uh, kind of made me gravitate toward you and want to bring you on the show. So I want to go back even further now and not only talk about your experience and everything, but I want to start out and find out from you if you can remember the first moment that you felt hospitality, that you can remember that feeling, and kind of how it made you feel. Do you remember?
Yeah, well, I have a couple of examples here. I remember being a young child. Christmas time, my family and I would always go to Williamsburg, Virginia, which is a historic area, and go just kind of walk around the neighborhoods there. It's a really special time of year there, but also being such an older part of the United States, they have different traditions. So I remember walking into a candy shop actually, and they had Santa Claus, and Santa Claus was singing Christmas carols. And I had on a shirt and it said something in Greek. I don't know how to speak Greek anymore, but as a child I did. And it said something like Merry Christmas or something. But the Santa Claus knew how to sing a Christmas carol in Greek and then invited me to sing with him. And I was felt so special and so seen as a young, I was probably 10 years old, as a young child singing in this Williamsburg candy shop, a Christmas carol in a language that I knew that not many people knew in this part of Virginia. So I realized that it's really about the connections that you make, even as a young person. And then I realized really early on, I wanted to translate that into my life and my career in the future. Whatever I did, I wanted to kind of, you have to listen and see people for who they are, and then also be able to connect with them in different ways. And sometimes it's as simple as their language or what they're wearing.
Yeah, like so you felt this feeling of hospitality, right? And you're like, I want to do this for other people. The way that Santa made me feel, I want to do this. Do you remember the first time that you had the opportunity to provide hospitality to somebody else
Yeah,
then?
it's crazy. I started my career in the industry as a college freshman. I was going to the University of South Carolina, go Gamecocks, and I
Nice.
decided it was my second semester. I applied for a job as a breakfast attendant at a select service hotel. So I was the one that was making the scrambled eggs on the buffet, all the things. And a guest came up to me and had all sorts of allergies. And I was like, wow, this is my opportunity. I can customize this buffet for a guest that has gluten sensitivity and their child needs certain things. So I was able to kind of go above and beyond and make a certain breakfast scramble for that guest. And then the next day I remembered her and just kind of made it without her asking. So that was my first little kind of tidbit of going into the industry and really kind of just, I love how hospitality empowers you to take care of people. And it's really the littlest things that make them feel connected to you as a person, but then also your brand. So now that guest probably stays at that type of hotel, knowing that there's going to be people like me that are going to help her child as well, and giving them what they need while they're on the road.
So at that time, did you know that you wanted to pursue hotels, or was it just supposed to be like, oh, this is just a job. I want some extra cash, like just something to do. And
Right.
then you kind of discovered later on that you really liked it.
Yeah, exactly. I was working at a call center my first semester, freshman year of college. Did not really enjoy that. I needed to see people, not just talk to them on the phone. So I had applied for that job. So I was like, this is going to give me some interaction. I'll be on my feet. I'll talk to people and make new friends. And so I applied for the job. Really enjoyed it. I didn't know much about the hotel industry at all. I was actually a retail management major at the University of South Carolina and enjoyed that and kind of had hopes of starting my own business and going on more in the fashion side of things. But then this hotel came along. I was working in the breakfast side, and then I ended up working the front desk as well, and ended up as the front desk manager there before I graduated. And quickly just fell in love with how much of an impact you can make on interactions with guests, and then seeing repeat guests coming over and over again and doing the littlest things, and they make the biggest difference. I just kind of got a high off of it and I loved it. And from there, I decided I want to do this forever. So since then, I've decided that I want to be a professor. So I want to be a collegiate professor of hospitality and tourism management long term. So right now, I'm doing everything I can to get as much experience so that I could be a good example for students, and then also kind of have a lot of things in my toolkit to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. Was this your Hyatt Place
Yeah,
hotel? Okay, so you were there for kind of a while, right? And you were able to probably get a really well-rounded kind of
exactly.
exposure in a comfortable environment that it seems like you trusted, right?
Oh,
And
I
were able
love
to kind of gain exposure to different facets and learn how a hotel works, especially in a college town too. Because
it.
when I went to college, granted, I dropped out, came back to Chicago, but I did work at a hotel in my college town in Iowa City. And there's this unique vibe about working in a hotel that's basically reliant on the
Yeah,
campus business and everything like that. And one of the things that I loved about it was that for the most part, every single person who was traveling there wanted to be there.
yeah,
When you work at, maybe a more business hotel or something like that, you run into a lot of guys who just simply don't want to be there. And that's cool too, because you also have an opportunity to make them feel like they want to be there more. But every family who comes in, they're like, I'm here to see my kid. Like, I'm so excited.
right.
They just give off those positive vibes, and you can't help but just kind of feed off of that energy and put it into your service. So I found that to be kind of exciting about working at that type of property, and it sounds like you kind of did too.
Oh, I loved it. And we were able to personalize experiences with guests. And I think that actually there was a few other University of South Carolina students that worked at the hotel, and the partnership between the hospitality school and the hotel grew along my time there, which was amazing to see. But the thing that really stood out to me about that Hyatt Place in particular was that the management there really wanted the students to feel empowered to come up with new ideas, to be creative, and to welcome guests. So like college game days, if we were at an SEC school, football was a huge deal. We would have visiting teams come in and they might not know where to park or where's the best place to tailgate. So we kind of came up with little goodie bags at check-in that would give information on parking, the best way to get there. We would put some funny things like our school fight song just in case they needed to know. It was a good way that we could kind of personalize the experience for those visiting guests as well, or like at move-in time, offering parents a good place to dine with their students, or cool boutiques in town to visit, just to kind of welcome people to Columbia, and so they could experience it on a more personal level.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that sounds awesome, right? So it sounds like that hotel really set the framework for
Yes,
a, a brewing passion for you, and just really the values of hospitality itself and what that means. So let's kind of go further with that here and talk a little bit about your beginning your career with Omni, right? As a leader in development. How was that for you? How did that process look?
oh, well, I was really excited. I actually chose Omni Hotels my senior year because the company owns and operates all of their hotels. It's a smaller company, about 60 hotels, but growing, and a really exciting company to work for. So they truly empower associates to take care of guests and also take care of their fellow associates, which is something that I valued a lot and appreciated as a college student that was entering my hopefully long-term career in hospitality. So I chose the leader in development program because as a rooms person, I wanted to get experience from the front office to the housekeeping side, but at a full service operation. And really what the program does over the course of a year is it lets you rotate through the rooms division, but also you get experience in sales, revenue management, human resources, and food and beverage. So you can see maybe as a college student, I liked the room side of things, but I spent a little bit of time in food and beverage now through this program, and I think that F&B might be my thing now, actually. So it gives you the opportunity as a young person to get that experience and maybe divert your career early on instead of finding out a little too late when you get burnt out in something. But luckily for me, rooms is my thing, and I absolutely love it. So I started at the front desk of the Omni Homestead, which happens to be America's first resort. So working at a property that's over 250 years old can pose a lot of challenges, and that's something that really attracted me to the homestead itself. And it's definitely a special place. I ended up spending most of my time there in the housekeeping department, and that is definitely like my baby right now. I love housekeeping. It is the most challenging position, in my opinion, in the hotel because it really forces the associates to put on their physical best every single day as they're doing backbreaking work, truly, but also kind of coming up with creative ways to personalize experiences in the guest room. And at a resort, guests don't spend as much time inside their rooms, they're more out for the day. So we had the opportunity to kind of do fun things, like if a guest had a child, in the way that you'd arrange the stuffed animals or putting extra little things in their rooms to make their stay a little bit more personal. So it's it was so fun and so challenging at the same time. My 2 years at the homestead flew by so fast. And I think I made some of the best friends from the management team to just the room attendants from that town of Bath County. It's such a small town, and the people are great, and that's what makes the homestead so special.
Well, I there's a couple things about what you said that I really find is just interesting and what I like. So you said it's how many years old is that property?
It's, I think, 254 now. It opened in 1766 as America's first resort.
That's really, really cool that you'd have the opportunity to work at a place like that. Cause I did a little research on the hotel. I saw that like a lot of presidents have stayed there,
Yes.
since it opened and everything. And just the backdrop along the mountains and everything, just absolutely beautiful. I worked at the Drake Hotel in Chicago, which is 100 years old. It's an old property. And that came with a lot of challenges, but we're talking about you're working at a hotel that's more than double the age of what I thought was like an ancient property. Was there a challenge in like product and expectations with like kind of when you're going to the Omni Homestead, like there's a weight that carries just when you say that name and when you're going there. Um, and obviously when you're comparing newer product and everything like that, did you find a challenge with that, especially when you're going to be in the room so much in the housekeeping department? How was that for you?
It is challenging, and it's really important, especially on the housekeeping side, that we had a really good relationship with the engineering team for sure. So that was important and a good balance to maintain. But I would say most guests coming to the homestead understand that it's such a special, unique property and also value the history as well. Most people that go visit the homestead have been coming for years or even generations. Like their family's been coming and they even want a specific room number because that room has a special value or place in their heart because they've been staying for so long, which is really cool. And it is challenging, especially if you're working the front office even and trying to understand the different room types, because there's not just a king room and a room with two double beds. It's a lot more than that. Every room might look a little bit different due to the uniqueness of the property. So yes, there are its challenges, but at the same time, it's what makes the homestead such a special place to visit and work.
Yeah, I find that what you just said kind of echoes a lot with how my experience was at the Drake. You have, your room types, right? And at a newer property, and I'm sure like, at the Hyatt place, right? We can use that as an example. There's probably maybe 6 or 7 room types and they're all exactly the same. You could put any guests in any of them and it's going to be the same experience. At the Drake and at the Homestead, you have people who are requesting specific room numbers, coming back time and time again. And each, like, you almost have to memorize the characteristics of every single room, for 483 rooms, and at the Drake 535 rooms. Like that's a lot to do. And it certainly is a challenge, but it makes it special and unique in the sense that most properties aren't like that. It's almost a privilege to be able to kind of be a part of the new generation of that history and that legacy that that hotel is boasting. And yeah, because we would have guests who would come and be like, my grandparents got married here like in 1930, and now like we're coming for our honeymoon because we want to experience what they experience. And it's just really really cool when you get people who have a personal connection with your property, you know, and it makes it that much more uh personal, I guess, and special for you.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I think that's one thing that I enjoy the most about hospitality is those personal connections you form. And at the homestead or the Drake, a historic property, you kind of have those built in personal connections with these guests who have connections, maybe even to a server in a restaurant because they've been coming for so long and that person knows their name, or they want a specific room attendant with their specific room and they want to have breakfast with a certain waiter. And that's what makes these places so special. And you can kind of overlook some of those faults in a building if you have that service. And that's something that the homestead was definitely able to provide. And I'm sure you could say the same too about the Drake.
Yeah, and I think that was really something special that you touched on, right? Like, you know, in the housekeeping department, you're seeing those rooms, you're in the rooms, and a guest, they're willing to forgive, you know, probably a minor condition issue when they see that their children's stuffed animals have been tucked into bed and that they're like, or their doll clothes have been laid out all nice on the bed and everything like that. Like, hospitality is always the key to winning. Like, it doesn't matter the age or the condition of your property, but it certainly does help when you're at a place where, you know, the rooms don't just stand alone as like in immaculate condition when you're dealing with such a historic place. Um, so and again, when you're working at a place that old, not only are the rooms old, but sometimes the tenure of the employees that you're working
Yes.
with can be old. And I know that a lot of people, especially young leaders like you, like me, and a lot of our listeners, have had to deal with going into a place, right? And then, you know, let's take room attendants for example, and that room attendant has seen 10 or 12 different managers come in and out, move on to better opportunities and stuff like that. How do you as a leader establish trust and build those relationships so you can use them to achieve what you need to do as in your position?
It's all about respect. So if I respect the room attendants, I am going to expect that they respect me back. But sometimes, as you mentioned, if there are a long tenured associate who's seen 10 to 20 managers even come through the housekeeping department, they're not looking at me as like, oh, I really need to kind of kind of work hard for her. I'm going to have a new manager in 6 months to a year. So I think that it was really important for me to just be myself, work super hard. And then also, it kind of was that, you know, you have to prove yourself as a young leader. And I pride myself on being the person that's going to be super enthusiastic, really bubbly, and then also be on the floor to support you from the morning to the afternoon when you're finishing your board. So I think that just having that presence, a physical presence, and then also being that positive cheerleader kind of for your team, and that's every single day. So I might be having a bad day, but my team's never going to know it. It's always a great day to clean rooms, and we're going to have fun doing it. And it can be a really tough turn day, but if I'm on the floor and I'm making beds and stripping rooms and telling jokes with my team, that's the quickest way to earn the respect, and it's well deserved too on both parts.
So yeah, like, and I think that works really well, and I've had good experience using kind of just being genuine, right, and just being yourself, because it's too hard to pretend that you're somebody else every single day.
Yeah.
What's your, you know, especially in a housekeeping setting, you have to deliver bad news a lot of the time. You have to discipline, coach, and counsel.
Mm-hmm.
Even just the simple act of bringing a room attendant back to their room, say,
Yes.
hey, you know, you didn't vacuum under here, whatever the case might be. Um, how do you deliver bad news in a positive way to your team?
Yeah, I think that it just starts from having a positive relationship from the beginning. If you have a good relationship, then it's going to be easier to even deliver the toughest news or to have a difficult conversation like you didn't change the sheets on a bed, which is the worst possible scenario pretty much. So I think that it starts with the relationship that you have with the associate, and then also being willing to have the conversation face to face and not in a rushing manner. So I always want to take the time to sit down, talk about it, and then also retrain. We can always use a teachable moment or talk about maybe why the mistake happened. So I kind of think it's a case by case scenario, of course, but also remembering that we're human. We are going to make mistakes sometimes, and then just bringing that personal connection back. The relationship's key to everything because you still want, at the end of the day, this tough news, you don't want it to happen again. And it's likely not going to happen again if you do establish the importance of or severity of the issue, but then also kind of combat it with we can do this next time better, and then end always on a positive note. So I like to give compliments. So that's usually how we end it. And then it typically issues won't arise again if you have a conversation in a good way.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I had a manager who kind of phrased it like you have to make emotional deposits with people, right? So
Absolutely.
whenever you have an opportunity to interact with one of your team members, you just make a deposit, make a deposit, make a deposit, and eventually you have something there, right? You have a relationship, and it makes it easy to, I guess, withdraw some of that if you have to have a negative conversation with them. But you can always build that bank back up and keep the
Absolutely.
trust there because ultimately, you know, we're all humans, and even as managers, sometimes we have to take harsh feedback, and it hurts
Sure.
sometimes, and especially if you're doing it, oh, I'm just trying my best to clean these rooms because I have 30 minutes to clean, but then it's really dirty in this room, and the manager's expectations are high of me. I'm very empathetic to that, and I'm sure as are you, and that's kind of why uh, you've been so successful in your hospitality career. Now, just another thing about your relationship with your team, because I think when I talk to housekeeping people, I really like to talk about that team relationship because when you're in front office, granted, yes, you deal with the team, but in my experience, I found that the front office team tends to be, maybe more laid back, more easygoing, just not as tough to manage sometimes, and you're really focusing on managing the guest expectation, whereas when you're in the housekeeping department, you're more so focused on really the team as your guest. So when you're working with them, right, and a lot of times maybe these room attendants will go a whole day without really seeing or interacting with many guests at all. How do you instill a sense of hospitality into them? Because I think sometimes that can be challenging or maybe even overlooked sometimes.
Yeah, it definitely can be overlooked and it is challenging as well. But I think that hospitality is a verb, it's something that we practice every day. So I would like to start with our morning stand up with our team. It's always a great day to clean rooms. So start on a positive note, bring the smile to their face, and then also talk about something that they can do as a room attendant or as a house person or a public area cleaner when they're interacting with guests, because they might see guests in the hallway, maybe when they're going out to their cart to get something. Just how to acknowledge the guest and just coming up with like kind of cute, quirky things that they might be able to say or acknowledge. But it's all about having that knowledge of what's going on around you, around the property. If you're at a resort, talking about activities that might be going on throughout the day so that they have that verbiage to talk to a guest. Because sometimes they might just not be confident enough to strike up a conversation with somebody passing in the hall. But us as a leader or a manager speaking with our associates and informing them of what's going on, or today we might want to talk about we're going to have fireworks on the lawn at 9 o'clock. Make sure you're bringing that up with guests, and it's a good way for them to break the ice, but also for the guests to get to know the person that's cleaning their room. So I think just talking about something different and fun every single day is a good way to get the room attendants or your house persons on the same page, and then also break that ice and remind them that they are hospitality professionals. It doesn't matter what you're doing in the hotel.
Yeah, and I kind of want to flip the script here, and this is kind of a tough conversation, but I think also if we're going to talk about it with anybody, it's going to be you, right? I think that especially as guests, sometimes there might be, whereas the room attendant may not be confident to speak to the guest, I think sometimes the guest might feel that way about the room attendant a little
Yeah.
bit too, because like at least in my labor market in Chicago, you have a lot of people who maybe aren't as fluent in English, and that kind of becomes something that as you stay you kind of will see, and maybe you don't know, like, okay, do they speak English, can I go up and talk to them, or or oh, is this not their job because they're a housekeeping, uh they're a room attendant, they're not a front desk person. Sometimes there can be a stereotype kind of within just their role that the guest might look at them and be like, well, they're not in a position to give hospitality. And in my experience growing up and traveling, I found that, my mom always kind of told me, like, always say hi to the housekeepers in the hallway, make sure that you go up to them and say hello, and thank them for cleaning the rooms and everything like that. And I found that, as I did that, if I was on a longer stay, that room attendant would eventually feel comfortable to kind of greet us and feel like, oh, I'm building a relationship with these people. Um, has that ever come up with your team? Kind of like their discomfort with dealing with guests, or maybe I don't know what your labor market was like, but if there was ever a language barrier, and how did you address it?
Yeah, I've worked in several different labor markets. So in Bath County, particularly, I wasn't really an issue that came up as often. However, working in a city hotel, it was something that came up, and it was more they didn't. A room attendant might not feel comfortable with speaking to a guest in the hallway, or vice versa, because they weren't sure, does this person speak my language? And that's something that can easily be broken down with just a simple greeting or a gesture. I mean, if somebody's here, they could say hello. So I think that it's just the simplest thing is making that first move. And as I would lead a morning stand up, or just seeing my room attendants on the floor, I want them to interact with guests and just make the first connection. Always acknowledge your guests when they're 10 feet from you, and just at least with your eyes, and then speak, say hello. And then that way they feel comfortable, hopefully that the guest feels comfortable to approach you and say hello back. It's something that needs a lot of work in the industry as far as breaking down those barriers. And as we do end up diversifying, I feel like it will get better, but it's something that as leaders we have to talk about, and building awareness to other leaders as well, so that they feel comfortable enough to have these conversations.
Sure, and I think you kind of, I was happy with the way that you addressed it in your recent Instagram live interview. Um, I want to say you mentioned something about how you might see your server or your bellman or your room attendant kind of being of a different race than you, but your executive leadership
Sure.
and your, yeah, I think you said you still to this day have not had a person of color as your direct manager in your career thus far. And like
Mhm.
I had to think about that for a second too when I heard you say it, because I'm like, wait, have I? And I have. I I kind of remembered, but the fact that I couldn't instantly like
Right.
recall
Hmm.
was kind of troublesome. And I think that there definitely needs to be more of a conversation about it. Um, and kind of piggybacking off of that, you mentioned in your recent interview that growing up in Midlothian and going to school in South Carolina, you had to unlearn a lot of
Yes.
what you were raised on in regards to white privilege and all that stuff. Did your hospitality experience play any role in that, being kind of exposed and that sort of thing? Can you
Yeah,
credit hospitality at all?
I would say that. Yes. I mean, as a hospitality professional, we are expected to welcome with open arms guests from any type of religion, race, ethnicity, whatever. I mean, and I feel like that representation kind of should be shown on the management level. We, like you said, we do see it from bell persons, our room attendants, our servers, but where's the representation from our executive level leaders? And H Careers just released survey information from one of their recent posts, and they said that 80% of upper level managers are white. only 7% are people of color. So that's obviously a huge gap there. So it starts with the representation. I will say that in the hospitality career, my hospitality personal career has helped me in wanting to learn more about how do I be an ally to the community, to the people of color, to the LGBTQ plus community as well. How do I kind of practice allyship every single day? And also, I want to be able to provide the best possible service to our guests, but also to our associates. I want them to feel welcomed. I want them to feel like they can approach me with any sort of problem. And that's not going to happen if they don't see me as that ally for them.
Agreed, agreed. And as like the kind of national conversation recently has shifted to race and kind of, Black Lives Matter movement has really started to take a huge prevalence. It's kind of caused me to reflect a little bit. And I would also, I think, credit my hospitality career a little bit to my development and kind of open-mindedness that I've kind of learned over time, because as a white guy who grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, in an upper middle class area, um, primarily white area, if I may add, I didn't really have a lot of exposure to people of color, and obviously you just, as Jane Elliott would say, like, if you grew up white in America, you're kind of inherently racist just because of the education system and
Yes.
media and everything that's just being kind of thrown at you all the time. So it wasn't until I really started my career in hospitality that I, kind of got to know my diverse teams, and, in talking to people, like, I would find that, oh, this person that I work with, who I'm really cool with, is, from like the south side of Chicago, which when you're from the suburbs, you're like, oh my God, the south side of Chicago, like everybody there is bad, right? Like that's what people want you to think. But then you realize, oh, this person's like super cool. We're friends. We have a lot in common. We can talk about things. We're cool with each other. And and so on and so forth. So I do find that one of the biggest gifts that hospitality has given to me is that, it's kind of just given me an appreciation for everybody. And I found that I have interacted with a lot of guests from all over the world, and that's helped as well. But I think the most valuable part has been the team, the relationships, the people that I've worked with at my properties. I'm just forever indebted to the people of hospitality for that, particularly.
Yeah, I 100% agree with what you just said. I feel the same. The personal connections and relationships that you build in hospitality are uncomparable to anything else that I've experienced, whether that be in college, just my friends there, to just playing tennis in high school, whatever. It's hospitality relationships are the ones that last, and there's a reason for that.
Is there anybody, particularly that has like made an impact on you in your career that you want to talk about, and why?
Mhm.
Tell me a story, I guess. I just want to hear about somebody you've met.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually the old hotel manager at the homestead, he's the reason why I chose to work at America's First Resort out of college. I was interviewing at several Omnis. Actually, the other two were city hotels. And I loved them. I thought it was cool. I didn't think I'd ever end up in Hot Springs, Virginia, just due to the remoteness of the town. And I was like, I don't know if I can live in the mountains for a year, and it ended up being longer. But I met the hotel manager in person. His name's Paul Vidston, and he is now the director of rooms at the Omni Charlotte Hotel. He is my mentor and an absolutely amazing guy. He really instilled in me from the beginning that you have to work hard every single day, and you never have arrived at a finish line. You just have to keep pushing, keep going. But the one thing that he said to me that really stood out, and it was actually at the end of my interview for the rooms leader and development position, he said, Lauren, you didn't come this far to only come this far. And I thought about it, and I was like, you're right. I've worked in hotels for 4 years. I have this degree, but it's not over now. I need to keep, just keep challenging yourself. And that's something that he instilled in me as a very young hospitality professional that I continue to think about it's been 2 years now, and I still think about it every move that I make. I'm like, okay, does this fit this mold here? Is this going to help me be better? Is this going to help me accomplish my next goal? And I definitely can look to him for advice or to kind of help guide me. But I think I already know what he's going to say before I have to ask, just because I know what kind of guy he is.
Well, yeah, it sounds like he's really made an impact on you, and I think every person who's successful in hospitality has had to have a mentor of some kind, and um, that's why now, in at least previous to COVID-19, I felt a responsibility to be a mentor to anybody who wanted to grow. And I never pretend like I know everything, but um, just to be a listening ear to somebody, I think is even a mentorship to a certain extent. Um, so when you talked about your 4-H camp, um, you said you spent a week of summer in Jamestown, Virginia, right? And
Huh?
you said that it helped you find your voice. That kind of I thought was really cool, right? Because is that experience that you had still, I mean, impactful to you
Oh,
now?
yeah, absolutely. I wish I could go back and camp as a kid every single summer. I mean, I wish I could live at camp. It was such a special place. And I started camping when I was like 11 or 12 years old. So I was a young kid, but definitely old enough to make decisions for myself and to kind of gain my own independence. And a week long camp away from mom and dad was the
Mhm.
best opportunity for me to make my own friends, but also to kind of have to fend for myself. So it was fun. And 4-H is really the values that they instill in you as a young person to be a leader, to use your voice, to stand up for what you believe in has carried on into my adulthood as well, and is the reason why I can be so loud and passionate sometimes about controversial issues that really shouldn't be controversial in my opinion. But and I think that that's something that I did learn from summer camp. And it's as simple as that. It's really the littlest thing had the biggest impact on me. And Star, the woman that I did the Instagram live with, she and I grew up as 4-H kids together, and she's super successful and has a loud voice as well. And it's common for all of us little 4-H kids that grew up. We actually did grow up in the suburbs of Midlothian, which is a predominantly white, middle class area outside of Richmond, Virginia. And that time away was our experience to just kind of be ourselves and also find ourselves in a different world. It was so different from where we grew up and what we experienced at school every day. And it was special. It still holds a special place in my heart, and it's given me a lot to look back and be grateful for. But I feel like that may even be my first real experience with hospitality, maybe that special camp time.
That's really cool. Like I could see you just like light up when talking about it. And it kind of just made me think. So like I all over your LinkedIn, right? It's honest, humble, hungry.
Yes.
Are those three of the 4-H's? Or am I stretching there?
You're stretching a little bit. I mean, I could even come up with a fourth H and make it my own, but theirs is head, heart, hands, and health. Is the four pillars of 4-H. But I would definitely say that 4-H is a big reason why I did end up coming up with my main thing that I would say my mantra: honest, humble, hungry. And I kind of stuck with that when I was a college kid. I was like, okay, let me come up with my thing. This is going to keep me grounded throughout my senior year as I started looking for jobs. And since then, I think a lot of people say that it's important to act with integrity and be respectful, whatever. I completely agree. But for me, I kept with my H's: honest, humble, hungry. Every single thing I do, whether it's professional or my personal life. And I think it's kept me grounded and focused.
Maybe the fourth one, hospitality,
There you
maybe.
go. That's a good one. I like it.
Yeah, because I mean, and now, hospitality is just it's part of life.
It is.
It just becomes a part of you in like the obvious ways, like holding the door open for people when you're, or the elevator door, right, when you're in like a public place, um, to just being tolerant and accepting of people who are different from you. Um, so I really, really enjoyed our conversation today, Lauren. I do kind of want to make sure that our listeners have an opportunity to find you on social media. We will include Lauren's LinkedIn profile link in the program notes for this podcast. She posts a lot of great content, and I'm certainly glad I connected with her. You also want to follow her on Instagram at You Go Lolo. So that's YOUGOLOLO. And Lauren, any final thoughts or anything you want to say before we wrap up today?
Sure. I always stay true to who you are. Remember, you didn't come this far to only come this far.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Lauren. It was an absolute pleasure. And I look forward to seeing what you do next.
Thanks, Kyle. I appreciate it.